Okay, so I know I normally send you guys feedback or you ask me questions during class, but because we had a quiz the first part of the week and we're only going to have one day together, and that's not enough time for me to talk to every one of you on all three tasks, and also because I'm going to be grading your quizzes and tests, I know I'm not going to have time to send you feedback even. So I'm just going to make a video going through the homework and explaining everything so you can follow along and check your own work and see how you did. Okay? But it's going to be your responsibility this week in order to check your work. So, in the notes section, I did say that the darker regions were purple, the medium were green, and then the light was white. And you were supposed to go through for 1 through 13 and find the probabilities. So when it says, what's the probability of spinning and landing on a purple? Well, there are 3 purple sections out of a total of 6, which simplifies to a 1/2 ratio. What's the probability of landing on green? There are 2 green sections out of 6, which simplifies to 1/3. What's the probability of landing on a 5? Well, there's 1 out of 6, which is simplified. What's the probability of landing on an even number? Well, 2, 4, and 6 are all even, so that's 3 favorable outcomes out of 6, which becomes a 1/2 ratio. What's the probability of landing on a purple or a white? So there are 3 purple sections and 1 white section. So that's 3 plus 1, or 4 favorable outcomes out of 6, which simplifies to 2/3. Okay? Make sure you're simplifying each of your answers. Next, it says, what's the probability of spinning and landing on an 8? Well, there is no 8, so I would put 0 out of 6 or 0. Number 7, what's the probability of spinning and landing on a number greater than 4? So it must be larger than 4. We cannot include the 4 at all. If we were to include the 4, it would have said greater than or equal to. So the only numbers on the spinner greater than 4 are 5 and 6. So that would be a 2 out of 6 ratio, or 1/3. Probability of even or odd? Well, all of the numbers are even or odd. There's 3 evens, there's 3 odds, so that would be 3 plus 3/6, or 6/6, which is 1. So that's a 100% probability, which makes sense because all the numbers are even or odd. Number 9, what's the probability of landing on a 1 or a 6? Well, 1 plus 1 is 2, so that's 2/6, or 1/3. Probability of not white. So you could just say, hey, 5 of these sections are not white, so it's 5/6. Or you could do the complement, which is 1 minus the probability of white, which is 1 minus 1/6, which is 6/6 minus 1/6, or 5/6. So same answer, just 2 different ways of thinking about it. Probability of not 2, so that would be 1 minus the probability of 2, which is 1 minus 1/6, or 5/6. Or, again, you could have just said, hey, here's 2, everything else is not 2, so that's 5 out of 6 where that would happen. Number 12, probability of not purple. Same thing. If you just look at it, 3 sections are not purple, so that would be 3/6, or 1/2. However, you could also use the complement, which is 1 minus the probability of purple, which is 1 minus 3/6, or 1 minus 1/2, which is 1/2. So same answer. And then lastly, what is the probability of not landing on 8? Well, none of these are 8, so that's 100% probability. Or you could have done 1 minus probability of 8, there is 0% chance you're going to land on an 8 because it's not on there. So that would be 1 as the answer, which we said. Okay, next we have a different situation where we are rolling a number cube and you're finding each probability. So when I say a number cube, remember that just means a traditional 6-sided die. So this number set or the sample set is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What's the probability of landing on a 5? Well, there's 1 5 out of 6 sides. What's the probability of landing on a 7? 0. 2 different ways you could write it. What's the probability of landing on a 3 or a 4? Well, both of these are favorable outcomes, so 1 plus 1 is 2. That's 2 over 6 or 1/3. Probability of not 5. Well, there are 6 numbers, and 5 of the 6 are not the number 5. So you could just write 5 over 6 thinking of it that way, or you could do 1 minus the probability of 5, which is 1 minus 1/6, which is 6 over 6 minus 1 over 6, which is 5/6, which we said that would be the case. Next, it says there are 3 green marbles, 7 red marbles, and 5 white marbles in a bag. Find the probability of each of the following. So what's the probability of selecting a white marble? Well, there are 5 white marbles out of, well, oops, it doesn't say the total, does it? But that's okay. We know there are 3 green, 7 red, and 5 white. So just add them together. 7 plus 3 is 10, plus 5 is 15. So there's a total of 15 marbles in the bag. That makes this a 5 over 15 ratio, which can be simplified to 1/3. Number 15, it says the chosen marble is red or white. So probability of red or white. Well, both are favorable, so let's just add them together. There are 7 red marbles and 5 white out of 15. So if I add those together, that gives me the number 12 over 15. And both of these are divisible by 3, so that gives me a 4:5 ratio. The last question is a experimental probability. Everything else before that was a theoretical probability, just because we're going to use that so much in the next 2 lessons. So I really want to make sure we're comfortable with that. Okay, so for the experimental probability, we're going to use this data set where we have a spinner and it lands on red 5 times, green 8 times, and blue 7 times. Number 12 says, what's the probability of spinning red? Well, it landed on red 5 times. Out of how many? Now, just because it doesn't say the total doesn't mean we're in trouble. Remember, we can just find it, add these together, and you would get 20. So 5 out of 20 times it landed on red, which is a 1:4 ratio. Or that means 25% of the time it landed on a red. We only have to do the decimals when doing experimental probabilities. So when I give you a bar graph or a table or something like that, we never have to do decimals. In fact, I don't want decimals for theoretical probability. Number 13 says, find the experimental probability of spinning a red or blue. So when it says that word or, that means that both are acceptable, both are favorable outcomes, so we can add them together. There were 5 times it landed on red and 7 times that it landed on blue out of 20 times. So that would give me 12 over 20, which simplifies to 3/5. If you wanted to see what decimal that is, that's a 0.6, which means 60% of the time it would land on a red or a blue. So hopefully you guys did okay. I definitely want to make sure that we understand this before moving on, because next we're looking at independent and dependent events, which can be a little bit more complicated than what we're doing right now. So let me know if you have any questions.